Alright, so what I'm doing here, in the first place I'm making a squirrel sauce we call. And I always start off by sauteing my onions for a little while. And what I'm going to do is throw in some celery in a minute. Now the celery, it kind of took me a little longer to prepare this than I planned. The celery I actually freeze ahead of time. I just put it in a little baggie. I cut a bunch of it when I buy a head of celery or whatever you call a bunch of stalks that they come with. I buy a bunch at a time, freeze the leftovers, and just use it for the next time I cook. It saves me money. I don't waste as much that way, and it keeps fairly well. I've probably had this stuff in here for, 4 or 5 months. You can actually buy it frozen in the markets now. Kind of think of myself as an innovator in that sense. And I will get to the squirrel in a minute. I'm going to heat up this pot, put some oil in it, and get some heat going on it. Okay, so I have quartered the squirrels and cut the backbones and everything into like these little half-size parts. That just makes it easier to cook. Really don't get a whole lot of meat off of those, but it adds to the flavor. I'll use whatever I can save. A lot of times there's small bits of bone, stuff like that. You gotta be careful of BBs if you shoot them with a shotgun, like I shot this couple. Yeah, BBs. Pick all the lead out before you eat it, because California says that causes cancer and whatnot. Okay, so I have thrown the squirrel into maybe about a half an inch, a little less than a half an inch of oil. Just kind of letting that cook. The onions in the back have kind of turned clear, and that's what I was looking for. I don't think they've cooked long enough. They're going to cook longer actually when I put them back in here. I just kind of like to give them that nice sweet taste that does cooking them up in butter like that. Alright, so this is what I'm going to be using for seasoning. We've got Tony Chachere's, which is kind of a season-all. We use a lot down here. Really good stuff. I'll eat that plain. Tomato paste will go into my into the gravy. Obviously black pepper, salt, a little paprika, cayenne pepper. Gotta have cayenne pepper. A little crushed red pepper for extra zip. And the bell pepper, I just keep some dehydrated stuff on hand. It keeps forever. And again, I don't honestly cook enough that keeping fresh bell pepper makes sense. So I'll throw it in. I actually threw it into my onions a little while ago, and kind of letting it start to rehydrate a little bit, and then I'll throw it into the stew later. Okay, the meat is browned up, probably as much as I'm going to go. And then next I'm going to empty out most of this oil, leave just a little bit, and I'm going to dump some flour in there and kind of stir the flour into the oil until it thickens up. Then I'll put the onions in and add about half a can of tomato paste. So I'll try to show you that as much as I can, given that I don't have a nice tripod. Alright, I've got the flour in there. It's thickened up into what is remaining of the oil. And then I've got a little bit of, I should say a little bit, all of that onion poured in. It's just kind of letting that, I'm going to add the tomato paste next. And then add water, cover it and let it sit. And that'll be it. We are almost done. Okay, I added a little bit of water, and what I'm going to do now is season it. I almost forgot to do that. You can't forget to season. So, little Tony Chachere's. And I use this liberally on just about everything that I cook. It's hard to go wrong with Tony's. If that's all I had, I could make a great meal just with that. But that's not all I've got. Now there is pepper in Tony's, there's salt in Tony's, there's red pepper, but I just kind of like to do my own. I always do the Tony Chachere's as a base, and then kind of, now I put salt earlier, so I don't want to put too much salt, otherwise it'll be atrocious. Paprika, I've been using more and more of this in my cooking lately. I really enjoy a little paprika. Cayenne pepper, obviously. A little little dose of that. A little bit of crushed red pepper. Gives you those little hot spots while you're eating. And once I get a good sauce going, I will probably throw in a little bit of Tabasco as well. Yes, this is a spicy dish, at least the way I cook it. But it normally is pretty good. You put it over rice, and so a lot of that heat goes into the rice, and it spreads it out. It's not that bad. Now I've got some water. See, obviously how thick it is. Just by putting flour straight into the oil, not into the water. I do it before I put the water in there. And the flour and the oil kind of make like almost an instant little roux. It doesn't have to be terribly dark because you're going to be really darkening it up with the deglazing that happens on the bottom of the pan and with the tomato paste. And I like mine to come out with this kind of orange sauce that you're seeing here. So that's it. It thickens up nicely. Obviously it'll probably stay about this thick. As I add more water, it'll thin out, but it'll also end up cooking down. I'm going to cover this and I'm going to let it simmer and kind of cook for about another hour or so. I'm probably going to actually add a little bit more water so that all the meat is really well cooked. And the big thing with this is getting the meat tender. It's cooked. It's ready to eat right now if you don't mind, losing a tooth in the process. But you really want to let it simmer for a while, probably over a medium heat, which is kind of where I've got it set. And I'll kind of just keep an eye on it so it doesn't burn. I'll come through and stir it every once in a while. So let it get tender, and once it's falling off the bone, be good to eat. And I'll make some rice in the meantime. That's the plan. Alright, so it's been cooking for 45 minutes to an hour. Just kind of letting it simmer. I'm going to let it go for a little bit longer, but this is the final product. And I'll just wait for the rice to finish up and be ready to eat. Pour it over a little bit of rice and good to go.